Open the straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch.
This is embarrassing. Delete it, President Trump, unless you want everyone to think you've lost your marbles. Trump is just Trump, and he says unhinged and crazy stuff, and a lot of times nothing bad happens. That doesn't really make it okay. Up first, guys, I was not super online over the weekend. Well, that's a lie. Here I go lying again. But I was, doing stuff, somewhat having a life, not totally checking, but you could not miss President Trump's wild Easter tweet threatening Iran in quite vulgar and oddly religious, or maybe he was making fun of them. I guess we'll unpack all of that tones, and it did spark something of a pretty widespread media meltdown. And I want to go through it all and then also discuss kind of what people are saying to defend or explain the post from President Trump. And then at the end, I'll give you guys my read on the whole situation. So here is, without further ado, the actual tweet itself that President Trump wrote. Here is Jake Tapper reading it on CNN. Let's take a listen, because it's so funny to me. He stopped and he omitted one part of the tweet and read the rest. Let's listen.
He has just threatened Iran in extraordinary graphic terms, giving the Iranian regime just over a day to either make a deal, reopen the Strait of Hormuz, or face hell. If your children are watching, be warned, the president did not use polite language. Quote, Tuesday will be Power Plant Day and Bridge Day, all wrapped up in one in Iran. There will be nothing like it. Open the straight, you crazy bastards, or you'll be living in hell. Just watch. We should note that destroying civilian power infrastructure is generally considered to constitute a war crime under international law, though the president could argue that the infrastructure has dual use and also is utilized by Iran's military.
I love how the one part of the tweet that Jake Tapper didn't read was when Trump signed off with "Praise be to Allah, President Donald J. Trump," which is just such a wild thing to post. And Trump gives so few F's at this point. Like, he's making, I think he's mocking like Muslims and Islam or the Iranian regime on Easter. And like that part gets omitted, but Jake Tapper will say the F part. Now, I saw other networks like Fox News, for example, said like, well, we'll give you the gist of what President Trump said because it's got some bad language in it. We don't. No, I actually think as a journalist or as a presenter, you should read the full, unedited, unfiltered statement. And it is what it's the president said it. So it's like, it's newsworthy. It's important that people hear exactly what was said, not your interpretation of it or your translation of it or anything like that. But this tweet has led to some pretty widespread backlash from all sorts of different media figures, independent media, formerly pro-Trump media, kind of fringe media, and of course mainstream media. But like, that's just the day that ends in Y, that they're mad about a Trump tweet. But there were some more interesting and unique and diverse perspectives as well. So here's a Mediaite headline. Media pundits from Stephen A. Smith to Alex Jones slam Trump's F-bomb threat to Iran. Quote, "This is a clown show." Here is what Stephen A. Smith, the kind of independent and maverick-minded sports commentator who's dabbled in politics and is even considering running for president as a Democrat, actually, here's what he had to say.
Look, I ain't no damn supporter of Iran, okay? Leading sponsor of terrorism, all of that stuff they want to do to Israel, stuff they've already done to America. I ain't no supporter of that, but you're the president of the United States, and you go on social media with a profanity-laced tirade, and then you're going to end it by saying, "Praise be to Allah." How do you think that's going to help us? How do you think that's going to help us throughout the world? I mean, seriously. For Muslim countries that ain't Iran. It never ends with this guy. It never ends.
Yeah, I mean, it really does never end with Trump. He somehow manages to like keep surprising you, even once you think you can't really be surprised anymore. And the praise be to Allah thing really did actually throw me for a loop. The profanity, listen, of course, I don't think that the president should be tweeting expletives, but the profanity is actually not the disturbing part of the tweet to me. I mean, okay, probably shouldn't be doing that, but it is what it is. I'm more bothered by like the casual threat to commit war crimes. I mean, obviously, if you were to destroy all the power plants in Iran and target civilian power infrastructure, that would be like a textbook war crime. When Russia did that in Ukraine, it was widely considered a war crime. It's that's just kind of like actually a textbook example of one. And obviously, you know, lots of innocent civilians would die as a result of that, from lost medical care and all sorts of horrific consequences. He keeps talking about sending Iran back to the dark ages. I thought we were there to save the people of Iran from their admittedly horrible government. But yeah, obviously also just conducting the diplomacy with Iran via unhinged tweet like this is wild to me. But I actually I saw a couple categories of people in the media explaining or defending this, and one of them I thought was silly, but one of them I actually thought made a really good point. We're going to get to that as well as some more of the backlash here. Alex Jones, yes, the kind of crazy conspiracy dude who used to be Trump's favorite media host, he would say, and a huge Trump supporter. He's also bashing this. Here's what he said. According to this article, Jones was just as irritated by Trump's post as Smith. Quote, "This is not a Christ-like Easter message," Jones lamented. Jones was just as irritated. I've already read that. He said a moment earlier, quote, "This is super bad news. This is not the old Trump. It's one thing if he says the F word on the campaign trail or whatever, but on Easter with messages about Allah Akbar and give up, you crazy effers, they're not going to. They closed the strait. It's killing the economy. America's sinking in global rankings of likability. It's just not what we voted for. We've never seen rhetoric out of presidents like this when we go to war. Even if you're for this war, this is really bad PR, folks." And he concluded, quote, "This is a clown show, folks, and I'm really worried." That is Alex Jones, and obviously I don't view him as a credible figure remotely after all the BS he's peddled over the years. But I think it's interesting that he and presumably a sizable chunk of his audience have turned against Trump over all of this, though I think most of Trump's base remains on board. The independent broadcaster Piers Morgan, who is, you know, at times friendly towards Trump, he wrote on social media, "This is embarrassing. Delete it, President Trump, unless you want everyone to think you've lost your marbles." That tweet has gotten a lot of engagement with people not happy with Piers, but I mean, I think he's correct. Obviously, listen, I know that Trump is just Trump, and he says unhinged and crazy stuff, and a lot of times nothing bad happens. That doesn't really make it okay, and it's just like, if there was ever a time to maybe dispense with that, you would think war. When Americans have died, countless civilians have been killed, matters like the international economy is at stake. You'd think that would be a time where Trump could maybe resist the urge to post insane tweets. But you would be wrong. If you were thinking that, you would be wrong. I mean, listen, it's baked in at this point, I guess. People knew this is what he was going to do. And that brings me actually to what I thought was an interesting explanation or defense of Trump on this from a political commentator, Frank McCormick, on X. Quote, "Trump is out of control." He's obviously pushing back on those of us who suggested that, saying, "Relax. He once called Kim Jong-un fat and threatened to nuke him, and a few weeks later had lunch with him." And then he attached a Trump tweet from his first term where he wrote, "North Korean leader Kim Jong-un just stated that the nuclear button is on his desk at all times. Will someone from his depleted and food-starved regime please inform him that I too have a nuclear button, but it is much bigger and more powerful one than his, and my button works." I think, yeah, I guess that would be in response to the kind of media alarmism over this, or I guess alarmism isn't the right word, because I think the tweet is alarming, but I guess the context to remember would be that he says crazy stuff often, and it often is just bluster or kind of a negotiating, posturing. Now, that's not necessarily a moral defense of those statements, but it is perhaps a reason to not worry that the sky is about to fall or that anything terrible is actually about to happen, because obviously he's made pretty outlandish statements in the past, and then the sky hasn't fallen. So maybe that's a little bit of hope core for you. And then the other angle here that I wish is I do wish that maybe this is part of the problem. This is part of why I push back on the media so much and the online doomsday fear-mongering. When they cry wolf so many times about things that are wild distortions or normal Republican policies, or they push just like ridiculous narratives suggesting that the SAVE Act is like Jim Crow and other stuff, which is just like normal election security legislation. It's like, because they have torpedoed their credibility and they've cried wolf so many times, now when Trump actually does something kind of crazy, kind of unhinged, people don't really take the 5-alarm fire from the mainstream media at all seriously. And that's actually, I think, very unfortunate, but it's also not something I'm willing to let the media off the hook for, as if it's not their own fault. It is. None of that's a defense of Trump. It's an explanation for part of why he gets away with it. Anyway, then there's like a genre of conservative commentary that I really don't get or don't find as a convincing explanation for how this is no big deal. So the conservative radio host Eric Erickson, who, no shade to Eric, I like him, he's a interesting guy, wrote about Trump's tweet. Look, I don't think it's appropriate. Wish he hadn't. But if I have to choose between this and Trans Recognition Day or whatever on Easter, okay. And he's saying effectively that he would rather have President Trump tweet out an expletive war crime threat in the middle of a war while mocking a major religion that, whatever you think of it, numerous allies in the region adhere to quite strictly. So listen, I'm not a fan of Islam, but I don't think it's smart for the president to be mocking it. Just as like a diplomatic measure, obviously. And he's saying, well, at least they're not trans posting on Easter like Biden did in his final year. And I'm like, I also am obviously super critical of all the crazy trans stuff that the Biden administration and the Democrats have done, from, promoting transitioning minors with these like unproven treatments and inviting crazy trans influencers to the White House and all of this. But it's like, you realize you could actually have neither. You could have a normal Republican or conservative president that doesn't do the trans stuff, but also doesn't do the unhinged posting. You could have had like a Ron DeSantis, for example. But also, like, that's just not quite a good analogy or comparison given the severity of the things, actually. Like, one of these is a war where U.S. service members have died and thousands of civilians have been killed. And the other one is like toxic culture war virtue signaling. These just really are not, like, to me, that's not a good comparison. And he got kind of roasted for that. And then some of these people are just like, who are defending Trump now, it's just like the internet is forever. And especially when you're a media professional, there's always receipts about what you said in the past. So Greg Kelly, who's a Newsmax host, tweeted, "Everyone's so horrified at President Trump and his language. Give me a break. This is the way people talk. Get over it. It's barely lunchtime, and I've heard the F word on the streets of New York City a dozen times. Trump is keeping it real. We are going to win." And it's like, listen, okay, like I said, the profanity, while I do think it's not really in keeping with the dignity of the White House, I'm not surprised by it, and I don't think I think the profanity is like actually the least jarring part of Trump's tweet. But with Greg Kelly, the internet is forever, dude. So of course they instantly pulled up this tweet from Greg Kelly in 2022. "I frown upon offensive vulgarity. I favor a ban, voluntary, on the F word. Should only be uttered in private in certain situations. Never in public." So it's just like diabolical to have stated on the record you don't think people should ever say the F word in public, just random people. But then the president says it while threatening threatening to devastate a civilian population with a country we're at war with. And you're like, get over it. It's just like, that's obviously insanely hypocritical and shows that you're just a partisan hack and you're just flip-flopping to defend whatever dear leader does that day. And I don't know how you can expect people to take you seriously or respect your opinion. Anyway, listen, the American media at this point is pretty ill-equipped to deal with this kind of story or development. How do you discuss it accurately and honestly? How do you do so when you I've cried wolf so many times, and then there's an actual wolf. Like, I'm not really sure there's a way to unring that bell that you've just been beating the crap out of for years. But I think the whole thing, for me, the whole saga is a lesson as to why it actually is important to have a healthy media ecosystem, so that when there's something that actually is concerning versus something that isn't, you can talk about it openly and honestly and dissect it and call it to question. But everything is not going well. Like, I don't understand how anyone can look at this and be like, wow, everything is going amazing.